Well, hello, everybody. My name is Julie Ladazinski. I am an assistant director and the gallery manager here at Valley Arts Center. Tonight, we're going to be speaking with two artists. So the way the night is going to go is the artists are going to talk for about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and then we'll have a couple of minutes of questions and answers. So think of some questions. In the meantime, I want to thank our sponsors tonight. That is Ohio Arts Council and the Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, as well as TKM Incorporated. So first, I believe we're going to have Ed Raffel speaking for us. And I'll give you you go until you'd like, or I'll give you a little wave at 10 minutes. Keep it short? Okay. And you can turn that on if you like.
Thanks for coming, everybody. And thanks, Julie, for inviting us to me and Wilda's show, and thanks to Austin also. I was trained as a dentist originally, and I started out as a portrait painter. That's my training. I'm self-taught, but I would not consider myself an outsider. Um, uh, Julie was nice enough to invite me to the show, and I told her, I have another show coming up. I can only show lamps. And I thought for sure she would just say, forget it. That's going to be ridiculous. But she agreed, so that I was surprised at that. I make these lamps as a sort of distraction from the rest of the work that I do. And I have a studio assistant, and we have pieces that are very, very boring to make. There's a ton of repetitive work, hundreds of pieces that are just duplicate pieces. It's extremely boring and tedious. And while my studio assistant is doing that, I'll make lamps. And it's the only thing that I do in the studio that's any fun, really. So that's part of the title, and it's why I think me and Will's work goes perfectly together. It was a magical pairing because they're very, very lighthearted, but there's something else to it. I mean, Will has a huge variety in his paintings, and my lamps are all sort of different from each other. The stuff is heavily material based, and my stuff is. It's all 90% salvage materials. I mean, I do have a lot of plexiglass that I keep on hand, and we do, I think, differently than most assemblage artists. Most of the pieces are modified heavily. I have a lot of junk, but I don't just hot glue the junk together. Uh, you know, Not to be a diss to a lot of the assemblage artists, but my approach is very different. Everything is, remanufactured, refinished, modified in some way. And I try to have it be very high finish when I'm done, not like, not still all brown as it came from the thrift store. Um, and my aesthetic is a little bit different than Will's, I think, because he's very thoroughly working into the backgrounds, and the backgrounds are in some ways more detailed than the foreground, so they're very sophisticated backgrounds. Versus I'm more of a minimalist. I try to have as few elements or pieces in the piece as possible, and I would rather have 5 things than 50 things. Um, so that's, I think, a primary difference. I don't know what else to say. Uh, I was using a lot of Circline fluorescent lamps. A lot of people sort of are unaware that this bulb exists. I think a lot of folks are unaware of how many light bulbs there are. There are millions and millions of light bulbs. If you look at a top bulb catalog, it's just absolutely endless how many light bulbs there are. I mean, I kind of got into the Circline stuff because I just think the toroidal shape is just a beautiful shape. And I actually do some chandeliers that have a toroidal carcass and toroidal bulbs, so they didn't think anybody had made those before. Um, but yeah, that's about it. Julie?
What sparked your second career?
Oh, I always wanted to be an artist since I was like 3 years old or 5 years old or something. Yeah. And my cousin was a painter. My cousin's a realist painter out of Philly. And he kind of got me into doing realism, and then I just grew to hate it.
At what point did you go from practicing dentist to an artist?
I was always making art periodically, but I would have sort of modal periods where I would do no art at all for years, and then I would just get increasingly angry with myself and then say, well, you have to make something here. And then I would do art for a couple of years, and then I would get involved with. I mean, I have a real estate business, so I would get involved with that. And everybody has to make money, and as you see, I haven't sold anything, so it's impossible to live on that income. At least it would be for me. So I had to make money somewhere else.
I have a question. So you said you were working on your plans while you have an
One other person. Yeah.
what is that person doing?
So we have a lot of carcasses that are made out of wood, and we have a lot of mirror pieces that have like hundreds of pieces of glass that have to be cut and fitted. And a lot of the stuff I do is they're 3D space tessellations, so they're just lots of the same object placed in different ways, different patterns, three-dimensionally.
So this person prepares the materials that you use to create your impression.
He's doing a lot of the basic work. Yep, definitely. And that's another thing. I was fortunate to my your parents tell you don't be an artist, you're never going to make it. That's like every artist's parents. Well, maybe not yours. Usually every artist's parents have told them that, and so that's sort of like a knee point for people internally, whether they give up or fight back. But yeah, it's just extremely hard to support yourself on visual art. Music's equally hard, maybe even harder. But I forget, what was the question? About the No, no, I retired 30 years ago. More than-
One more question. So being a dentist and what that entails in working into your mouth and cavities, does that have that focus? Has that impacted the formation of your art?
It's a great question. When you're a dentist, your entire world is a quarter of an inch big. That's your operating range, and it's other than, I mean, neurosurgery and ocular surgery. There's other surgeries that are more fussy and detailed, and you have to use microscopes. But as far as normal, regular surgery, it's one of the very most demanding hand-eye skills I think you can work under. But yeah, it's impacted me. I mean, I was always very, very fussy, and retentive person. So it was like that was my nature. But I went into it. It was a perfect fit. But it does impact my work. I mean, I'm sort of as you get older, you sort of pick your battles, and I'm fussy with this. I used to be fussy with things that never mattered and didn't show, and now I'm a little bit less fussy with stuff that's not visible to the eye. But if you can see it, I want it to be perfect. So yeah, I would say so.
I told my husband I was recovering from perfection. And he said, "Ooh, when did that start?"
The recovery or the perfectionism?
No.
Oh, the recovery.
Yes, I have nothing to be proud of.
No, it's a mental health. I mean, art itself is a neurosis in a way. I mean, to have to present something, sort of, you're presenting something in almost in lieu of yourself, like look what I did. So it's a neurosis to a great degree.
Where do you find your materials?
I usually go to the thrift store, and I have just piles and boxes with the crap. But yeah, this junk, and I tried to organize it. I mean, I know Gwen Wade has like boxes of really organized stuff. My stuff is I have boxes of it, but within the box there's such a variety that it wouldn't matter that it's in a box anyway, because I have to dump it all out to find anything that I might want. And it's actually hard to work that way because you have no mental register of all the items that you have, so you sort of have to you're not always getting the thing that you want, but you sort of make it work. But what was I going to say? Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I was going to say now I don't have to go to the thrift store anymore. People just give me stuff. They'll say, "Do you want like 500 of these?" And I'll say, "Okay, sure." Um, and I'll take anything. Everything. The latter. If you see something that's really amazing, you think, "Oh yeah, I know I can do something with this." But I had Barbara Martin. Many of you might know Barbara Martin. She gave me 4,000 plastic suction cup hang tag hangers. They have a blue ring and a suction cup. They're just the stupidest thing you've ever seen. And I have 4,000, like thousands of them. I don't even know how many. Just big bags of them. And I did a big 54-inch piece, and I used maybe I used 150. So now I have 3,800. So yeah, it's endless. But I like getting stuff. It's good. The material makes you choose what happens. And so it's confining, and I think every artist, to a degree, wants to be confined, because if you just it gets rid of the fear of the blank canvas, which is, "Oh, what am I going to do now?" And so it sends you down a road that you take.
Do you have any idea what that end process would be when you begin a piece or say a lamb? Or do you look at the pieces and let them?
I have had pieces that came to me in a vision and then I produced it. Um, but that's pretty rare. Usually it's the material is instructive to one degree, and then you have problem solving that immediately occurs, and then you have to solve a problem with some other material. Never. I made a rule to myself, and that was one good thing about not ever needing money from art, is I told myself and actually somebody else told me too, um, never uh, put a limit on how much time or how much money you spend on materials. What will be the point? It's antithetical to art to do that. You say, well, after 5 hours, I'm going to quit on this painting or whatever it is. That would be ridiculous. How are you ever going to make it? I'm not saying anything I've ever made is great, but obviously you are never going to approach greatness if you limit yourself in those two categories.
I think it's interesting when you're talking about not worrying about maybe the financial concerns of it. But then you're also using things like cue balls and like going to thrift stores. So why do you think you're so attracted to the junk part of it? Not the cue balls and these things are junk.
I think I think it's a green approach. It's and it's also there is beauty in absolutely every item. It's how combine it with other items. You know, and the mundane. The idea of elevating the mundane. And I think a lot of um, salvage art or found object art or assemblage art attempts to elevate the mundane, and then sort of it still looks like junk glued together. So I want to have my personal aesthetic heavily rails against it looking like thrift store stuff. I don't want anything that I make look like it came from a thrift store.
I'm just curious because the lamps especially have this functional quality to them, and you're clearly having to think through the process of getting them to turn off and on. Do you ever have failure with getting them to work with,
Yeah,
or even just the design in general?
yeah. I had a really bad failure God, and you would think that after doing this for long enough, you wouldn't screw it up. But yeah, I just had a 10 that has a fixed thing that I'm doing that has 10 fluorescent lights. And I don't know why I forgot, but I wired all these lamps in parallel, and fluorescence, you can't do it that way. They're in series and they're limited to just a few lamps. Can never wire them in parallel because the first one lights and then the rest of them just don't light. Anyway, I forgot, and I did the whole thing entirely wrong and had to do it over. But yeah, I screw up plenty. Actually, I mean, to me, it's just always a series of mistakes. You know what I mean? Until it's done, it's just a series of mistakes. I mean, it only becomes a good choice retroactively in a way. I mean, that doesn't relate to failure per se, but that's sort of my mentality on it. Thanks for suffering through.
Well, Ed said thank you to everybody, so also thank you to everybody. But I guess like if I was going to talk, I'll kind of like start at the beginning. When I was a kid, I was not. I went through a period of time where I stopped being good at school, and I was still good at learning. I just wasn't good at school. And one of the things I was good at was always art. Not necessarily an art class, but drawing pictures of my friends or my teachers or everybody else to make them laugh. So when the time came to say, like, what am I going to do with my life? I decided I was going to go to art school. And when I went to art school, I mostly focused on traditional art. So I was mostly a figure painter. So I did a lot of figure painting, drawing over and over, the nude model, 4 people on the stand, paint it, all that stuff. And I didn't really know, like, at this point, I'm like developing skills, but I don't have a voice. And when I got out of school, I was like, what am I going to do? And I spent some time as a special ed teacher, and then I was a financial advisor, and then I was a mortgage wholesaler. And one day, my wife Eliza says to me, let's quit our jobs, sell our house, and we were living in Los Angeles at the time. I'm from Los Angeles. Eliza's from Cleveland, and moved to Cleveland. And I looked at her and I go, okay. And so and this was all preempted on the fact that our daughter we had a baby, a brand new baby, and we worked a lot, both of us, and we kind of made that choice. And then I went back to school to become an art teacher, and it wasn't until the kids got a little older that I really started trying to push myself out there. And in fact, it was Rick and Rick Roscoe and Mark Yasinchek, not Rick, Randy Maxon and Mark Yasinchek gave me a chance and showed my work at Ramparts Gallery, which is now Gallery 202 in 78th Street Studios. And in my mind, I was still making art. I still made art. You came to my house, you got to see my art, right? If you didn't, you never saw what I did because I didn't do anything. I didn't put it out there. I didn't do anything. And after they gave me that chance, it ignited something in me, and I started getting back into developing my voice and developing my art. And in my art, I have 2 main ways of working. um, I don't do a lot of planning on paper. I do a lot of planning in my head sometimes and projecting, or I do a lot of responding. So the work here is in those 2 categories. And some of the work here is I start painting, I come back to it and see what I see, and then I start painting again and see what I see and start painting again. And I build layers of responses to what's already there. And like Ed was talking about, the having to fit within constraints, encouraging creativity. So for me, having to fit within the constraints of what I'm seeing and responding to that actually helps me create stuff I would never create otherwise. whether it's the interlocking drawings I do where they respond to the negative space, or whether it's layered paintings that are responding to shapes that are appearing from shapes combining or different things happening. And so for me, that kind of responding lets me break the habit. A lot of times artists will create the same thing over and over. You get these patterns and you start going, okay, this is part of my repertoire. I can do these things. And having these responses to what's already there or the negative space has allowed me to break some of those habits intentionally, and create things I would never create otherwise, which I really enjoy. The other type of work here is projected. So I do not sketch. I do not really pre-plan um, on paper, but what I do is I see the whole thing and then I just paint. And a lot of that seems totally opposite from the other way that I work, and I don't know why that is. I don't know why I have these two almost opposite ways of working, but I do, and I like it because I feel like um, sometimes the drawing, the sketching, the planning ruins it. Sometimes I'll make a sketch and I'll be like, I love this sketch. It's so wonderful. And then I'll go to recreate it and be like, I hate you. Right. And I think like sometimes like that freshness, that first pass, and if my students are listening, no, you cannot work that way. Later. But I think that first fresh pass sometimes gives it a life and an energy that it wouldn't have otherwise. Making the painting and not having a drawing underneath allows the painting to be fresh and clean and without the tedium of having to, all right, so when I teach an animation class and I teach the kids how to draw a cartoon, and one of the things I do is stay loose, draw from your shoulder, let it happen. It might even be worse than if you slow down and draw small, but eventually you're going to come around to this way of working. It's going to have more energy. It's going to be fresher. And then we go to pen and ink. And then the kid goes over the same drawing like this. And I tell him, listen, you are not a slave to these pencil drawings. These pencil drawings are just a guidepost. You recreate it on top. And so then they go, some of them. Some of them don't. Some of them listen. But I feel like sometimes it's dangerous to have that sketch be so valuable. You know, I see a lot of my students will draw these beautiful drawings before they get ready to paint. And then they go to paint and they're painting around the drawing because they're scared to ruin the drawing. It's like, I, I feel like sometimes just having that direct approach allows me to create things that have a strength and a freshness that wouldn't otherwise happen. And sometimes mistakes happen. Sometimes I make something, I'm like, oh, well, I screwed that up. And I adapt or I let it live, right? Because what was it you said about mistakes? Mistakes after mistakes. Yeah. Yes. So I think like the thing about it is it's part of it, right? It's part of the process. It's part of the experience. It's part of the beauty. It's part of what's fun about it. And those are two ways that I work. Thematically, I also have two kind of main things that I'm focused on. Obviously, I focus on trying to make bright, colorful, fun work. I draw a lot of inspiration from toys and video games and graffiti and illustration and all these things. And I'm trying to spread joy through my art. But under that, the two main themes that I'm focused on are the fact that what makes us different from each other is our strength together. Being the same as each other is not adding anything new to our collective uh, communal experience. Our differences are what make us stronger together. Anybody play Dungeons and Dragons before? So if you play Dungeons and Dragons, You don't want a party of all fighters or all wizards or all thieves. You want a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of difference, right? Because they can all contribute something unique and different. And I feel like sometimes we are so tribalistic as a society that we're concerned with all trying to fit in. But it's the ways you stand out that matter more to me. And so I do a lot of variations on theme where we are, yes, all the same, but we are also all different. And so I try and focus on that concept in the work. So, like that shark piece over there, I know they don't look like sharks, they look like spams with faces on them. But every single one is the same, but all their eyes, their noses, their gills, everything is a version of it that's different and allows them to kind of separate. Or even the chaos piece over there, where I've got lots and lots of the same thing marching on uh, in the space. Every one of them is different because I just painted the shape of the thing directly and then drew into it, and so they're all just different versions of that. I did do a little planning of that one. So and so for me, and then the birds, like you can all see, like these are kind of variations on the themes and how we're the same but different. The other main thing is that I try and focus on as a generalization is input output. We are not designed to have so much input, right? It is not part of how we were created as creatures. There's so much information coming at us at all times. And I like to take that information and throw it back up onto the canvas in a reprocessed format so that I am expunging myself. I'm expelling some of those demons of information that are just like piling up inside of me, inside of my brain, that are kind of like overwhelming. Like, oh my God, there's so many things that I'm experiencing right now. If you were to stop and think about 100 years ago, what people experienced, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 10,000 years ago, it's not that, right? And so I think like personally, like it's kind of like my way of exercising that massive amount of information. And is that it?
If you say it is.
So, all right. Any questions? Yes?
Go ahead.
No?
Do you feel that most artists start out as input starvers and output junkies?
I think that you cannot be an input starver even if you tried in this world.
Not now, right?
Yeah. I think to your point, yes, and you get a lot of people talking about replenishing your well, right? Having experiences so you can bring those experiences back.
Read a book, go to a concert. Right.
But I think if you're just aware of the carpet fabric pattern in front of us, there's enough input right there, right? There's enough input everywhere that you don't necessarily need to go and actively seek it out. I'm a nature junkie, so I like to be outside. I love plants. I love the way that I love the variety of plants. I love the variety of adaptations plants have. I think there's such a wonderful, cool thing. And for some reason, I find it incredibly recharging to be in nature. Um, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's always been all this stimulation. It's just different now. But I think language has changed the way we engage with that stuff. Like the codification of all of this, our experience, and the way that that's piling up inside of us. I think compounding, right? We have words that mean other word combinations, and then we have words that mean those words combined with other words, you know? And I think it's just, I don't know. You had a question?
No, I think that now you're exactly right. The amount of information the average, especially kid now, that has to, especially with social media and TikTok and all the videos and YouTube, the amount of information that's just pouring into these poor people's brains. My brain is, I mean, that's why you have all the, crazy suicide rates and just,
It,
it's overwhelming, and it's just a wall of mostly unnecessary stuff that's completely unfiltered. And when you leave it to the average individual to filter, uh, they will fall into an addictive pattern of behavior versus a proactive, I should not be doing this pattern of behavior because it's just too easy to
So,
just suck it all
so to
up.
paraphrase Ed, go touch grass, kids.
Yeah, don't
Did
take
you have a question?
It was more of a, I guess, a technical question, but I noticed on the descriptions there were different types of paint used and other media. When do you kind of decide when to use what, I guess?
I have a lot of materials around me all the time. Um, I don't think there's any oil paintings in this one, in this show right now. I try not to use oil paint. I love it, but I'm trying not to use it because I work quickly and I don't like waiting. And I there's a decent number of paintings here. It doesn't look like John Sargent's collection, but it's a decent number. But um, I have a collection of paintings that, for one reason or another, I stopped working on, and I'll never go back to them. You know, paintings I love, work I love, but they were a moment, right? And that moment's gone. And for one reason or another, I didn't stay in the moment, so that painting's going to get painted over, right? Um, there are also some paintings in here that have paintings underneath them, and I think like it's okay, right? Like Ed was talking about time limitations. There's some artist, and I can't remember his name, that we learned about in school. If he did not sell his paintings, he would keep working on them forever. He had paintings that he'd been working on for 40 years. And I think like sometimes for me, like if it's there and it's in my house and I'm painting and I look at it and I'm like, you know, it's time, we'll just paint over it. And some of it may stay and some of it may go. This painting, actually, this painting used to be a ship on a stormy sea. Then it was a collection of artists, Salvador Dali, Andy Warhol inside Mickey Mouse. There was a Frida Kahlo, and then there was some other artists sketched out behind that. And so, like, some of it got to live and some of it's gone, right? Some of it's still part of it and some of it's forgotten. And that's okay. I mean, it's just my life's filled with things like that. All our lives are filled with things like that. Like, in the moment, this was pretty awesome. But, like, yeah, no, I'm, I left that behind.
Did you curate this show, these paintings for this show in particular, or was it like, oh, I have this piece, I want to build upon that, I have this piece, or like, oh, I have this space, let me find things that I already have that go together and then add to.
Yes. Um, so when Julie first contacted me about the show, and I knew Ed was going to do lamps. Ed makes big wall pieces too, which I adore. But if I was sharing with these big wall pieces, I would have had to put in about half the work that I had to put in. But since I was sharing with lamps, like weren't really competing, we were complementing each other in the space, which I love how it turned out, you know. But I initially put a bunch of pieces in, and Julie helped me select some of the ones. We kind of worked together to select them. I created 3 pieces for the show um, because we had how would we have 2 months, 2 months,
it.
2 months.
was short, very
It was
short,
very short.
lead time.
So I made three new things. So the marching one is new, the birds is new, the dog is new, and the cat is new.
But what you might say is most gallery shows are 2 year to 2 year lead time.
Yeah.
So this was, you got it or you don't got it, because you're in that amount of time, you're not going to make an entire body of work.
And I also have a show that was supposed to open this summer in at Waterloo, and that's moved to October because of their schedule. But I was trying to make a lot of little pieces for that show, and so I didn't have a ton of time to make a full body of work. But when we selected the work, we were trying to select things that went well together. I do a lot of botanical work, still the same colors, the same stuff, but a lot of like uh, landscapes or landscapes, both. And I just like those pieces didn't necessarily fit the show, right? Yeah. I just say yes, you know? I mean, I think like for me, I, I was taught by a figure painter named Dominic Cretara. He's passed now, but he was somewhat famous. Um, and Dominic Cretara was a formalist. And so for him, every painting should operate as an abstract painting that supports the subject, right? So the colors, the shapes, the angles, all these things should be subliminally supporting the thematic concept. And so for me, I still kind of like have a lot of that in my practice. Like I do a lot of like color relationships. I'm thinking very much about hierarchies of focal point and how I can use color and value to manipulate that. I even have concepts for work that have different hierarchies of focal point if you look at it through your phone in black and white or if you're colorblind. I haven't made this work. This is all in my head still, but and so when I'm approaching color, I do have a thought process where I'm working towards trying to control the viewer's experience while also being spontaneous. Um, and I think sometimes I get a little playful with it. Like in Chaos, I was trying to push and pull some of the figure groups. So some of the figure groups are almost receding and some are popping off like almost like stickers, things like that. And sometimes I'm just trying to control where you look next. Yeah, I've never heard that before.
How do you think being an art educator has kind of influenced your work as an artist, if at all, when teaching learners?
So years ago, Julie came to our house to see my studio. Paintings were leaned against foos tables and ping pong tables with Legos under them. And the video game station was there, and the toys were there, and all that stuff. And so for me, I think like obviously that has an influence, and also working with young people has an influence because I think like there's like a nostalgia that I'm trying to capture that's both personal and universal, right? So I'm trying to like capture this idea of this nostalgic and then being a little tongue in cheek sometimes with it and playful with it. But I think like having the youth around me all the time is really helpful. But I also myself am a young at heart person, you know. I like to play, I like to be playful, I like to play with words and play with, you know, people and have fun, and I think that's important because like if you're not having fun, like you should be. You should be. Try.
Well, it comes easy to you.
Does it?
I mean, I'm the anti-fun. Like I'll go into a room and then they'll shut her down. But
Getting
no,
laughs now,
it's how it's how you grow up and how you're raised and how you develop as a person, and then that depends on how much fun you have.
Yeah, and I think everybody has a different definition of fun, but I hear everybody laughing. I think I saw people looking at your work at the show. I think you're plenty fun. You might be fun differently.
But yeah, well, you should have seen me 10 years ago.
Chat GPT. Now, sometimes they just come right out and you're just like, that's what it's called. And sometimes I think about it, and sometimes I crowdsource it and ask people, hey, I have these ideas for titles. What do you think? Yeah, Prasad's helped me with some titles. So, what about you?
Oh, titles are kind of a pain and a joy at the same time because you want to send a message, but then, after the 100th title that you have to make, it's like, oh God, what am I going to call this? So, but some of them are fun. I used to try to intentionally trick the viewer, or there would be a play on words. Now, sometimes it's about the material, and there are plays on words in some of them. A lot of it would describe one or two of the items. I mean, in the lamps, there's a lot of the titles have just one or two of those items in the title. Uh, but I mean, like Slava Ukraini, it's got the yellow and blue, and I was thinking about that at that time.
Some of my titles are just like painfully obvious. That one's called Run, and that one's called Sharks and Other Sea Creatures. That's deep. You wouldn't get it. I'm kidding. More questions?
How does, there is nostalgia in all the work, and I wonder how memory works for each of you.
I'm petrified of getting Alzheimer's. I can tell you that, because you can't function without memory. We're absolutely completely dependent on it, and every second we live is dependent on memory. As with that, they're just basically their functionality is completely dependent on memory. But regarding the artist, I just think everything's new. Every problem's a new problem. I mean, you might have seen the problem, you know how to fix it, which makes it easier. But then you're bored. So what's the mileage in that? Mm-hmm. The new problem is always the better problem because you have to figure it out.
In the formalism of some of your choices, there is this memory sort of nostalgia conversation. Like it's not what doesn't when in the occurring of everything. There is it looks like it's a relic from a movie that I saw in 1966 as a kid, or I saw Flintstone, not Flintstones, Jetsons, or I saw, and it's not like that you're being, I'm going to do a Jetsons, but how memory emerges or bubbles up, or because when you find, oh, this is authentic, there's this convergence, right? So
right, you're absolutely the summary of everything you've seen prior, and I love 50s stuff, and then I love 60s stuff, and I love early 70s, and then design died after that. I mean, pretty much.
After Shag Rugs?
I mean, architecture progressed in some certain ways, but car design died, and a lot of and industrial design died, at least in the United States. It died here. But yeah, I mean, I love industrial design. I love 30s cars. I mean, I think 1930s automobiles are some of the most beautiful things that humans have ever made. But you like Legos, right?
Yeah. You don't like Legos?
No, I think that it's when I look at your paintings, I think this guy's gotta love Legos.
Yes. I think like I grew up with computers, and I grew up in a time when playing video games and doing that stuff was so fresh and so new and so interactive, and still an, an right now video games are at the level of big production movies, right? They're so produced and they're so overly, but at that time there was such an art to it. It was people trying to create something. And listen, we can talk about this part later. Don't ask me any questions about this. But at my core philosophy is I don't believe in art. I do not think art exists. I free myself from all the baggage that comes with art. I like to make cool stuff for people to experience. And I feel like those people who were making those video games at that time and the people who made toys at a certain time and lots of experiences that we've had in our memories and our collective memories that have been warped and changed by us, right? That's part of that whole input output. Those people are trying to make cool stuff for us to enjoy, right? And for me, I think that that's like it's coming out, right? Like I let go of some of that stuff and I am making something that might be, reminiscent of Stretch Armstrong or of a Lego or of an isometric video game or of, all of these things. So I try and let that stuff come out as it wants to. Sometimes people are like, how did you come up with this? And my only response is I got out of the way and let it happen. I just moved myself out of this and opened myself, and this is what happened. And that's, for me, all obviously coming from memory.
Yeah.
So, and experience, which is just another type of memory.
I think we're very similar in that regard. If you subtract your ego and if you say, well, I want to entertain. I mean, art is entertainment. It's just not a time-dependent style of entertainment. So, I mean, I view myself the same way as a conduit. I know I'm making conscious choices, but I feel that, like you're saying, if I'm not in the way, it will happen naturally. If I don't question myself, doubt myself, second guess myself, I eventually will come to something that's good. And it's entertainment. I'm doing it for myself because I want to be happy with what I've finished. But if nobody's entertained, I've failed miserably. So, I mean, I think they're just entertainment events.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. Hey.
Do you airbrush in any of your paintings?
The only one here that's got airbrush is the big skull.
Okay.
The cactuses have been airbrushed. Nothing else has been airbrushed. There's some enamel paint that's been like brushed on with a brush. Some of them have spray paint in them. Um, the, I, I don't know if the far one on the right has spray paint. I know, oh, actually, I lied to you. The giant kaiju robot back there has some airbrush on it. And then some of it I didn't like the airbrush, and then I painted over it, and then I hand brushed it, but some of it's still there. And then, yeah, and then there's some spray paint in the Wild West one back there. And no, that painting's not here. Yeah, but otherwise, no. I want to get into it, and I don't want to get into it. The biggest problem for me is the masking, right? It's like it stops me, right? And I want to go, go, go. And so that's part of the problem for me is I guess maybe I could airbrush and hand paint around it. You know what I mean? But like in that big skull piece, though, I was trying to combine as many different styles as possible. And so that was part of like, I went out of my way to airbrush those things.
Yeah, I work at Blair. I probably like all of you. Like, I don't know. Hi. I know that you probably there too. Yeah. So like the materials are interesting to me, but I'm also a traditional oil painter. And the work that I'm making now is very like interested in responding, which is like not how I was trained. So similar to you, were very traditional training. And now I'm like, what if I added a snake? What if I like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like I think it needs a rainbow now. I don't know.
I mean, there are.
It's been really fun.
Yeah. And so you're airbrushing stuff?
No.
Oh, you're just hand painting.
I'm thinking about getting into it because I don't know. I'd have to become, I think, an acrylic painter.
Yes.
Like
to be able to paint, to airbrush over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think even the enamels are they're gonna crack.
I know. There's like certain things that don't play nice together.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. But I mean, there are other things you could do. You could experiment with doing it on glass and putting the glass over the oil painting when it's fully dry.
That would be so awesome. Yeah.
The problem with airbrushing is it's extremely mechanical texture.
Yeah.
No matter, in other words, every airbrush painting you can tell, unless it's been gone into, you can tell right away it was done with an airbrush because it's not like blending with a fan brush. It's
Right.
a very, very mechanical way
The hand
to.
is completely out of it other than like the movement.
Yeah, in general, it's not. I mean, my personal view is it's not a good way to apply paint. I mean, unless you're modifying it later or using it for like ultra photo realism,
Yeah.
and then still going back and putting details on top of it.
I would argue there's no bad way to apply paint.
Well, you win that argument, automatically.
Do I?
Yeah, by default, you win that argument. But it's for me personally, it's an extremely mechanical way to apply.
There's an artist you should look at. He goes by Mythic Fish Stick
Okay.
on Instagram. You can DM me if you want, and I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
His real name's Trey Abdullah, I believe,
Okay.
but he does some really cool, interesting stuff that plays with hyper realism, some airbrush, and actual physical stuff on the painting, and then like some rough brush painting, and like everything. The way he puts it all together is really, to me, it's really, really nice. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Plus, he's good with names. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
You built it.
And please feel free to stick around for some snacks, talk to the artists. They'll get you roaming now. Real quick. Great.
Oh, it's good. I was